Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Conversations with Agapè. Today, I am joined by Mariette, who will be sharing her insights on finding faith in Catholic dating for Catholics. Mariette, thank you so much for joining us today and being willing to be our special guest speaker. I will turn off my video. I will turn it back on towards the end of today's session. But again, thank you so much for being here today. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you. So like Ashley said, I'm Mariette. I am the Community Experience Director for CatholicMatch.com, and I also run our customer service team. And I met my husband on Catholic Match as well, long before I worked for Catholic Match. So I feel like I have some good insights into online dating, why it's relevant for Catholics, and just some kind of tips and things to make online dating work better for people to hopefully connect with a good Catholic spouse. So a little about my story. I grew up in Montana and I was living in Idaho trying to find a good holy spouse, and I couldn't find anyone, and I joined Catholic Match. And at the time, I was really closed off to a very short range that I was willing to consider. And I was on and off for years with no luck. And about 5 years later, I finally just thought, okay, maybe God's will isn't my own. Maybe for some reason, he's going to call me to find someone elsewhere. So I rejoined Catholic Match without any parameters whatsoever set. And within 48 hours, my now husband wrote me for the first time. And he lived in Cleveland, Ohio. So we had, I think it was like 1,700 miles between us, which was an overwhelming thought. But God worked out all of the details really beautifully. I was able to relocate after a few back and forth visits and countless hours video chatting and everything. I was able to relocate to Ohio, and we got married a year to the day of our first in-person meeting. And we just had our fifth baby a couple months ago, and it's just been such an enormous blessing. Online dating completely just changed everything. But I wanted to talk about some of the common objections to online dating and some things that might help show how relevant it is, because there's a lot of reticence, especially among Catholics. I think that we sometimes have this really romanticized ideal about how we should meet our future spouse. And I just want to share some things that might open your eyes to online dating in a different way and how it's relevant. So first of all, I think online dating is relevant because, for one thing, we have less people in our parishes oftentimes. The church is growing at a fast rate in certain countries. Africa, India, there's places where converts are just coming up like crazy. It's a really, really fertile harvest in those areas. In the United States, in a lot of the developed Western world, in Europe, in North and South America, there is dwindling numbers in a lot of parishes. So sometimes the people just aren't there. Oftentimes I hear people say, well, I don't want to meet someone that's not in my local parish, but it's like, what if the right person just simply isn't there? We just have a different shift in the church sometimes. Something else someone once said to me is, think of Roe versus Wade, the millions of babies that never got to live life and see the fruition of God's plans if they had been able to live, would have been many of those babies, potentially your future spouse in that area, and now they weren't there. So there's some shifts that I think is good to be open with, this idea that maybe I need to broaden the range of my search. And that's not to say that online dating always means that someone's far away. One of my actual friends lived in a big city in Cincinnati, Ohio, has a ton of Catholic churches. And she met her husband on Catholic Match, and they only had lived like 20 minutes apart for their entire life, but they just never run into each other. So we do find local or closer connections all the time. But for someone that might be a couple hours away or across the country or across the world, as we have different shifting dynamics in the church, sometimes you just don't have who you were expecting there. So where are other people? a lot of people are online. The vast majority of marriages now in this century are going to come from online connections. My husband and I, whether it's Catholic Match or other dating sites, we know at least about 15 other couples who met their spouse online. The vast majority had been through Catholic Match. We're the largest Catholic dating site in existence, and we're now the oldest longstanding operating, I believe. But despite that, we've known a couple people that met through some other like defunct websites and things. But the point is that like, if you know a married couple, there's a chance that you've met someone that met online, okay? Where are people? They're online. They're using the internet every day, and it just makes the world a little smaller. Something else that people oftentimes object to online dating or think is not relevant is they talk that it's not very romantic. And how did people used to find their spouse? They found their spouse at the communion rail or in the choir loft. And it's true, through a lot of human history, you definitely most likely would marry someone that was just local to you in your community. However, we've also seen like many wonderful holy marriages throughout history, especially amongst like Catholic monarchies and things. They came through arranged marriages. There's a very famous story that I always love to recount of a man just putting an ad in a newspaper for a holy, devout woman that would be interested in marriage. And a woman responded to the ad and they got married. And their son was Pope Benedict XVI. Like, he just put an ad in the paper. So there have been different ways all throughout history that people have met their spouses. Padre Pio once, when he was asked about the television, people said to him, you know, what do you think about this invention? And he said something along the lines of, well, it's clearly remarkable, but just wait until you see what they do with it. Because he saw the potential for awful things with television, which have definitely happened. The TV has been used to display all kinds of awful sins and time wasting and terrible things. But we've also seen the TV used for really wonderful things. EWTN is a great example. All kinds of educational shows. I'm a homeschooling mom for my children. I'm so grateful for different TV clips and things that have helped us, research different books we've read or time periods we're studying in school. So he was right. Look what they'll do with it. Bad things have happened, but it's always encouraging to see good things happen with it. And the same can be said with the internet. I think people sometimes throw the baby out with the bathwater. They just see what's bad with the internet, all the awful things that the internet's used for, but it is a tool that we have now. We can use it for good and for God's glory. And I think that connecting online with other faithful Catholics is using the internet well. And sometimes it may not seem as romantic. A lot of people point to the story of Saint Teresa's parents, Saints Louis and Zélie Martin. They met on this bridge and God spoke to Saint Zélie and said, this is the one whom I prepared for you. And they got married just a few months later. And it's very, very romantic. But not many people have that, or not everybody's going to have that story. A lot of good, faithful Catholic couples I know have met in bars or a classroom or at a restaurant or in a youth group, all kinds of different things. Not everybody's going to hear this voice of God speaking. So I think it's important that we don't overly romanticize this really kind of extraordinary, out of the ordinary experience as the only way that good Catholic couples can meet. Remember Pope Benedict XVI's parents, they met in a newspaper ad. I always like to think that, excuse me, I don't usually recount when I think of meeting my husband. Yes, we exchange these emails and phone calls and video chats back and forth. But the first time we met, we started talking online in April. We met in person on July 19th. And we both went to a separate city. I wanted to drive there. He was going to have some family there. This kind of like neutral turf for both of us. And I remember walking up my now brother-in-law's driveway, meeting my husband. And like, it was such a special moment. Like there he was real. He was so wonderful. We had the best weekend, the first weekend that we visited each other. We went to Seattle and we saw this gorgeous church at the base of the Space Needle, and we walked Pike's Place Market, and we went to the fraternity parish to mass there, and we did all these wonderful things. And that weekend was actually really romantic, and Ethan held my hand for the first time. And that's what I tell people about, like, yeah, we met online. I'll never hide it. I'll preach to everyone how great online dating was. But we had like our own beautiful romantic story that came later on. So it's no less romantic. Your relationship doesn't lack romance or being special just because it starts with an online connection. My parents were set up on a blind date by my aunt, and my aunt literally like called my dad and just like put my mom on the phone and made them chat. My mom said it was kind of awkward and weird and strange. And then they went out on this date and it was awkward and weird. And then like a beautiful thing happened and they were married a year later. But, it's okay that we don't have this overly romanticized love story from the very first connection. It's okay to connect over a random message and things grow, because you take things offline. A whole relationship doesn't happen online. You take it offline and God can just have as much romance and beauty for you as anyone else. Something else that we're trying to do at Catholic Match that I think is really of interest to people and has been going really well is we just launched an online community called Relate, and we have community rosaries. We're going to do some Stations of the Cross during Lent. We have trivia nights, discussion nights, social happy hour kind of nights, just connecting people in a friendly way too. We hope that eventually this new program will have romances that directly come from it. But we really think building Catholic community online, it helps you grow as a person and be who God wants you to be, even outside of like searching for a spouse directly. So there's a lot that is making online dating relevant, from community building, personal growth, those connections, friendships. I made some great friendships when I was online. A couple local Catholic guys that we could tell we weren't like romantically interested in each other, but we made good connections and friendships regardless as well. So that's something really nice to keep in mind as well, with online dating. So even though it may not sound as romantic, a lot of the stigma of online dating, I feel like, is going away. And God just has a beautiful story for everyone. And it doesn't matter how the story starts. It's where it ends up, and the journey along the way. So if anyone is intrigued by all these ideas and you're thinking, well, maybe I'll consider trying online dating, I have some tips that I just want to go over that might make it a more fruitful, effective time for you. And these are things that I learned from my own experience being on and off of Catholic dating sites for the time I was, and then also working at Catholic Match. I have a lot of insights from what I see. And the three biggest things, there's 3 steps that I think if you take, you have a much greater chance of success. So the first thing is like having a really thorough and complete profile. You want to give things some time and attention. Make sure that your tone of voice and your personality can kind of come through in how you type. If you are a more serious person, it's okay to seem serious. You don't have to throw up jokes that you think make you look different than you are or more fun. And if you're really jovial, you don't have to tone it down. Like if you're a goofball, let it show. It's totally great though to let your personality come through, have a few good current pictures, and really like answer the different questions on an online dating profile so that people get a good overall picture of you. Something else that I think is really important is to be open as far as distance. Like I said earlier, the right person could be close and you might make a connection, especially people that are in like a big metropolitan busy area. There are probably so many Catholics around you that you've never been able to connect with because there's so many parishes and it's just a really, really big geographical area with a lot of people. But for people in a more rural area, it might be that you already know everyone within a 25-mile radius, but the right person might be 100 miles away or 150 or 200 miles away. Maybe the right person's across the country. We have a lot of international marriages that happen, but just being open to God's will with distance. Long distance does not always necessarily mean you have to move. I think very oftentimes, especially women, feel like, oh, well, I'll have to move. But I have totally seen relocations happen on either party through online dating connections that were long distance. I moved for my husband, but we knew from the start I wanted to go back West Coast, and we eventually made that happen when it worked out with his career. My older sister's best friend, she met a guy on Catholic Match. She was West Coast. He was literally on the East Coast, as far away as you can possibly get practically in the country. And he relocated for her. It worked. So there's definitely like an individual story there. And I always like to say too, how many people move for their dream job or some dream opportunity with something? Like, what could be more of a dream than a good holy spouse? Like, if you find the right person, it's worth it. I used to love where I lived in North Idaho. It was a gorgeous lake resort town, just beautiful, and the mountains. I had such good friends at my parish, a really, really vibrant community. I just never wanted to leave. But my husband was 100% worth it because that's what God wanted for me. So being open to different distances, I think will make an online dating journey a lot more successful. And another thing to keep in mind too, is that people are always moving around now. That's kind of another reason why online dating can be helpful is people are always moving. So you might be in an area where you feel like you know all the Catholics. But then someone new moves to the area and they update their zip code for their location on their profile in Catholic Match. And all of a sudden, this new person just pops up in your area and you might make a new connection a lot faster and easier than organically running into each other eventually. And then the last big tip that I give to people, all of this kind of tying into just being open to God's will, is to give online some time. Very oftentimes, people kind of, I think in our very instant gratification culture, we want things now. Amazon can get it to us in 24 to 48 hours. Or if we want to stream something online, we type in the name and we can watch it right away. We just want everything as fast and quick and seamless and easy as possible. So very oftentimes I see with people with online dating, they give it a very strict limit. It may be a week or a month or a year, but they give it a mental cutoff and then they're done. And what I would challenge people to keep in mind is there probably isn't anything else that you put a time limit on for meeting someone. Most people wouldn't say, if I don't meet someone at church in 1 year, I'm never going to try to date someone from church again. Like, you just wouldn't do that. You're just kind of open. So I always would suggest to give it time. Time is going to pass anyway, okay? And if the right person is on there, but you're not going to connect for 2 years, the 2 years are going to go by anyway. If that is simply God's timing, it's just his timing and his will, but it's worth the wait. So my husband and I were both frustrated in our time on Catholic Match. We didn't connect sooner, but I see now in hindsight God's plan. So my husband's 7 years older than me. So when I first joined at 18 or 19, when I first got on Catholic Match, my husband was, he was in his later 20s. I wouldn't have been mature enough for him. Eventually, he was in a very serious relationship with someone he met from Catholic Match, and he wasn't on the site anymore, but I was on the site. And then I met someone locally and I got off, and he had broken off the previous relationship, but I was dating someone local, so I wasn't on the site. It took a few years for God's timing to work out where I was mature enough and old enough. I was actually ready for marriage, where my husband wasn't seeing someone, where I wasn't seeing someone, and we were both on the site at the same time. There's all kinds of kind of crazy circumstances and factors that change, but giving it time, I don't think anyone will ever regret. I like to think of it this way. The time's going to pass anyway. If you keep a profile up on Catholic Match or any dating site, even if you don't pay for it, you just keep a free one up and you periodically check it and see who's there. If you don't meet anyone, you have not lost anything. You're no worse off than if you never had the profile in the first place. But if you meet the right person, you will forever be glad that you kept that profile up. It will be, I always almost am scared to think, what if I had never signed up that random Wednesday night and not gotten that message, that email from my husband? Oh, I don't think we ever would have connected. And he's just such a good spouse. I'm so grateful for him. So be open with time. God's timing is different. You have nothing to lose with just letting it sit there. Be open with distance. Maybe you're going to find someone closer, and maybe it's going to be someone that's further away, But if it's God's will, if this person's the right person, those details, they'll all sort themselves out. And just having a good, complete, thorough profile really helps people get a clear idea of who you are and everything. And I think all of that will lead to a lot more success. Even if you don't meet your spouse online, you were at least open to God's will, open to possibilities, and you never know how things will work out. I even see the ripple effect in our own life. So I met my husband, we got married, we were living in Ohio, and we knew a gentleman from a church there that he was acquaintances with, worked with this guy's sister. And we set my sister up on a date with this guy. And now they're married. And he relocated across the country for my sister. And they have 3 beautiful children. And that's like another ripple effect from us being open to God's will and connecting online. Now that has like spread to another happy marriage. And so you just never know. But online dating, even though it may not seem very traditional or Catholic or maybe chivalrous or whatever is in people's heads, God is using it for good. There's wonderful stories coming just up every day. We have more success stories than we can hire success story writers to write. And it's really, really beautiful. And you just never know what God has in mind. But I hope that everyone, if you've been reticent about online dating, that you'll just prayerfully consider it. Know that it is super relevant for Catholics in today's day and age, and that a lot of good is coming from it. So thank you so much. And that's all I have for everyone today.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights. And I really like how you focused in on God's timing, because it truly is perfect timing. And for couples who do find love in Catholic Match, don't forget about us here at CatholicMarriagePrep.com, that we're here to serve your online marriage preparation needs too. So again, circling back to what you said of how incredible Catholic tools are online. So it's a great community that we all are serving the same mission of building Christ-centered families, and it really is finding that perfect match. So thank you so much for sharing your insights. If someone wants to sign up, how do they do that?
Sure, they can just either go to CatholicMatch.com on just the computer, or you can download our app and log in and sign up on the app, just Catholic Match in the App Store for Google or Apple and everything. And yeah, we're always there to help too. If anyone has questions, they can always write in to support@CatholicMatch.com, and we're there to answer any questions. I've got a great team of customer service reps that want to help everybody just find success.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate hearing your story, and thank you for all you do for Catholic Match and all the Catholics out there.
Yes, thank you, Ashley. I really appreciate the time.
It was a pleasure meeting with you today. Thank you so much. And thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you next time on Conversations with Agapè. Thank you.